deflasana that way. So I don't know anything. I have to deflasana every day when you go to soak up a bit in that day. Francis said, I come to appreciate, not to be appreciated.
Bona fide. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Canto 2, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations, text 36. Kalena milita dhyam avamrishya nirnam. Stoka yusham svanigamo batadura paraha. Aviritastva anuyugam sa hi satyavatyam. Veda druman vitapasho vibhajishyati sma. Kalena milita dhyana vamrishyanrinam. Stoka yusham svanigamo batadura paraha. Aviritastva anuyugam sahi satyavatyam. Veda drumam vitapasho vibhajishyati sma. Kalena milita dhyam avamrishyanrinam. Stoka yusham svanigamo batadura paraha. Avirhitastva anuyugam sahi satyavatyam. Veda druman vitapasho vibhajishyati sma. Kalena, in course of time, milita dhyam of the less intelligent persons, avamrishya, considering the difficulties, nirnam, of humanity at large, stoka ayusham, of the short-living persons, Swanigamaha, the Vedic literatures compiled by him, Bata, exactly, Duraparaha, greatly difficult, Avirhitaha, having appeared as, Tu, but, Anuyugam, in terms of the age, Saha, he, the Lord, he, certainly, Satyavatyam, in the womb of Satyavati, Vedadrumam, the desired tree of the Vedas, Vitapashaha, Vibhajishyati, Vitapasha, by the division of branches, Vibhajishyati, will divide, Sma, as it were. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the Lord Himself in His incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider His compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with a short life, and thus He will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches according to the circumstances of the particular age. Purport. Herein Brahma mentions the future compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam for the short-lived persons of the age of Kali, of the Kali age. As explained in the first canto, the less intelligent persons of the age of Kali would be not only short-lived, but also perplexed with so many problems of life due to the awkward situation of the godless human society. Advancement of material comforts of the body is activity in the mode of ignorance according to the laws of material nature. Real advancement of knowledge means progress of knowledge and self-realization. But in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years, now factually reduced to about 40 or 60 years, to be all in all. They are less intelligent because they have no information of the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years and consider it to be the only basic principle of life. Such person is described as equal to the asses and bulls. But the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in short treatises like the Bhagavad Gita, and for the graduates, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Puranas and the Mahabharata are also similarly made by Vyasadeva for the different types of men in the modes of material nature. But none of them are independent of the Vedic principles. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. We want to talk a little bit about the partiality, or the impartiality rather, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I remember that was something we were talking when we started the 7th canto in the last round that we read Srimad Bhagavatam. Is the Lord partial or impartial? It says that the Lord is the seed-giving Father for all the living entities, and if His devotees are samadrishti, if His devotees see everything equally, then how come the Lord sides with the demigods and encourages the demigods to fight with the demons? And oftentimes we see, like in the pastime of Bali Maharaj or in the pastime of Vritrasura, how the Supreme Personality of Godhead encouraged the Suras, encouraged the demigods headed by Indra to get the bones from the Dichi to overpower and defeat the demons. So if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be impartial, then why is He displaying partiality there? So that can be understood on different levels. First of all, He's not partial because He's treating the demons or people who are inimical against Him in the way that they want to be treated. So let's say I'm here, and let's say you want me to treat you, yourself, in a very nice way, right? You expect that from me. And I do that. I treat you very nicely, I serve you, etc., etc. That's being completely impartial to you, because I'm treating you how you want to be treated. But if you want to be treated really nicely, and I start accusing you, I start chastising you, then you wouldn't like that very much. You would consider that I'm treating you in a very partial way, that you want to be treated in a certain way, but I'm not treating you in that way. So the demons, or people who are asurik, asuram bhavam ashrita, they have a very inimical outlook or bhav towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and because they hate Vishnu, let's say take Kamsa for example, he really hated Vishnu, he really hated Krishna, because Krishna was the cause of his death. Now if Krishna came up to him, and instead of, let's say you have the arena of Kamsa, and there he is, Kamsa has just sent Kuvalaya Pita to try to trample Krishna, to try to trample Balaram, and Krishna has slayed the elephant, and then he's come onto the arena where he's wrestling with Chanura and Mushtika, and then he kills them, and he jumps onto the where the audience is sitting, and he pulls down Kamsa into the main area of the stadium. And instead of fighting with Kamsa, instead of punching him and kicking him, what if he just gives him a lotus flower? What would you say? Is that partial behavior or impartial behavior? If Krishna treats you in a way that you don't want to be treated in your relationship with Him, is that partial or impartial? It's partial, right? It's partial. Because as I mentioned, you expect to be treated in a certain way, but that person is showing this distinction, or going with their own whims, or going with their own choice, and how they should treat with you instead of understanding how you want to be treated, if that makes sense. So Krishna reciprocates with His devotees, not just His devotees, but jivas in general, with however they want to be treated. Ye yatha mam prapadente tam stataiva bhajamiham mama vartman vartante manusha partha sarvasha. So as those people, as those jivas surrender unto Krishna, Krishna reciprocates with them accordingly. And everyone, even the Baddha Jivas, even the conditioned souls, the people with demoniac mentality, the Vishayis, they're also following Krishna's path. Because Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanaman Mam Prapadente. It takes many, many births and deaths in this mature world to finally come to the realization that this mature world is, this Bhavasagar, this ocean of material existence, is not my home. It's not a place of my material enjoyment. It's not a place of enjoyment, and I'm not this body. So those people who have that outlook of the karmi mentality of to enjoy their senses, they're also following Krishna's plan. Because birth after birth, by going through that, all these, like Prabhupada is mentioning, people are short-lived and they're perplexed with so many problems of life. By going through that life after life, they finally come to the realization that Krishna is everything, let me serve him finally. So the demons want that relationship of rivalry with Krishna. So Krishna reciprocates with the demons how they want to be reciprocated with. Therefore, Krishna is impartial to the demons. The demigods want a very favorable relationship with Krishna. And he treats them in that way. He takes care of them. He gives them advice when they come and they approach him for help. Therefore, he's impartial to the demigods as well. So Krishna is impartial to the demons and Krishna is impartial to the demigods. Now, if you take this on the highest platform, okay, that's just on an external platform, because it's on the material platform. I consider myself to be a demon, or I consider myself to be a demigod. I want this person to reciprocate me in this mood. But if you consider yourself to be a demon or a demigod, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, there's only two types of people, the suras and the asuras. You're still identifying with your body. Because even if you call yourself asuric, a demon, are you actually a demon? Is that your real identity? No. Your real identity is Krishnera Nitya Das. So that's based on the mature platform. So therefore, Krishna's impartiality is shown to its highest degree by the fact that even if Krishna kills the demons, vinashaya cha dushkritam, and even if Krishna saves the devotees, paritranaya sadhunam, the result of both of these relationships with the demons and demigods, the result is the same. Just like yesterday's verse, all these demonic personalities, Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arishta, Chanura, and the list goes on. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport yesterday, he was saying that all these demons that Krishna killed, what did they attain? Liberation. And Prabhupada says two different types of liberation. Either they got liberated in the Brahma Jyoti, or they got their four-handed Swarupa and they went to Vaikuntha. Now, is that the desire of a demon? To go to Vaikuntha and to be with Krishna? It's not. But that's because the demon is identifying with the mature body and the ahankar. But on the highest platform, as we mentioned, that even demons are Krishnera Nityadas. So Krishna's impartiality is shown that even though he kills the demons, they still get the same result as a demigod would get by glorifying and praising Krishna. So that's Krishna's greatness. So to show his impartiality, Krishna comes in unlimited different avatars. And Krishna's purpose, Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya Leela Yetena Bhuvanani Jayati Yajasram Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmataya Manasu. Krishna's pastimes are constructed and designed by his internal energy in such a way as to capture the minds of the conditioned soul. Because by meditating and thinking and discussing, Majjita Madgata Parana Bodhayastas Parasparam, by discussing Krishna's pastimes, what happens? Ya pranina pratifalam smaratam upetya lilayatena jayanani bhuvanani ajasram. That by meditating and being captivated by Krishna's pastimes, the the conditioned souls, they achieve the result of Krishna's highest impartiality, which is to be liberated and go back to the spiritual world. So Krishna is known as Manohara. Anyone know what that name means? Captures mind. Captures the mind. So it's not that Krishna just has a name, Manohara. Anything about Krishna is Manohara as well. Because Krishna is an absolute person. Right? So Krishna's form is Manohara, Krishna's name is Manohara, Krishna's clothes, his Vaijayanti garland, his pastimes, it's all Manohara. Because Krishna is absolute. So similarly, Krishna came in the form here, it's mentioned, in the avatar of Srila Vyasadeva. And last weekend I was going to install we were on the way to install a Bhagavatam set because we just had our Bhadra Purnima marathon. We distributed a lot of Bhagavatam sets. I don't know exactly how many, but Vaisheshika Prabhu and Devamrita Maharaj was also, they were really glorifying Sydney for a really nice effort down under. And I was going with Ananta Prabhu, and he told me a really nice story about how Bhagavatam came to be spoken by the son of Vyasadeva. And it's a story from the Puranas about how Parvati, so the wife of Lord Shiva, as we know, she's very intimate with her husband. We see again in the pastime of Chitraketu, in his previous life before he became Vritrasura, how Parvati was sitting on the lap of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was giving a spiritual discourse, transcendental knowledge to all these renowned sages, and Chitraketu comes in his Vimana, and he, and he makes fun of Lord Shiva. And then Parvati, she gets angry and she curses Chitraketu to become a demon. Of course, she's the material mother. She's the supreme material mother. Radharani is the supreme spiritual mother. So she is always considering the welfare of the living entities. Srishti sthiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayava yasya bhuvanani bibarti durga ichhanurupam apyasya chacheshtate sa govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Maya Devi, she's the wife of Lord Shiva, but she's still following the ichha of Krishna. She's still following the desire of Krishna, which is to emancipate the conditioned souls from this material world. So it appears that she's putting us in entanglement, but actually her purpose is to frustrate us by putting us in entanglement, and to the point where we actually want to get out of it, want to get out of the material world. So Parvati is very intimate, very close with Lord Shiva, but as we know, Lord Shiva, he's a very different type of Vaishnav. He's the Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, but generally Vaishnavas are very suchi, they're very clean, they're clean shaven, and they decorate themselves nicely with tilak and stuff like that. But Lord Shiva, his hair is matted and he wears ashes as a tilak, and he lives in a crematorium. And what does he wear around his neck? Does anyone know? Yeah. So Narada Muni came once and he approached Parvati when Lord Shiva was not in Kailash. And Narada told Parvati that you may be the wife of Lord Shiva, but there is something that I know about Lord Shiva that you don't. And she said, oh, but I am the wife. I know everything about my husband. And he said, no, there's something you don't know. And she says, what is it? And Narada Muni says, ask him about whose skulls are those that Lord Shiva is wearing around his neck. So Lord Shiva comes back, and as Lord Shiva is coming back to the ashram where they live, Lord Shiva sees Narada Muni flying away, laughing, smiling. And so Parvati, in great anxiety, she asks Lord Shiva, she asks her husband, whose skulls are these? This is something I don't know about you. Please tell me. And Lord Shiva says, okay, I will tell you. These are actually your skulls. She said, my skulls? And he said, yes. You have taken many, many, many births in this mature world as my wife. Just like we see in Bhagavatam, Sati, Parvati in her previous life was Sati, and I just read yesterday in Prabhupada's purport. I don't know exactly what the history is, but Kritika is another name of Parvati as well. So I'm not sure if that was like another birth of Parvati, but anyway, according to this pastime, Parvati in her previous birth, Parvati had taken many, many births as the wife of Lord Shiva. And to honor Parvati, each time she passed away, Lord Shiva took that skull and he made a garland out of that. And Lord Shiva tells to Parvati that, but even though you have taken birth so many times, I have always remained here. I have not died. In one sense, I'm sort of eternal, you could say. And she says, oh, wow, really? So how can I also be eternal like you? And he says, for that, you have to listen very carefully to the Bhagavad Purana. What is that verse about the Bhagavad Purana, how it has arisen after Kali Yuga? Krishna Swadhama Upagati Dharma Jnanadibi Saha Kalo Drishta Nashta Esham Puranarko Adunoditaha. So the Bhagavad Purana has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna, and it's providing the light which the blind men of Kali Yuga were lost in the darkness without Krishna's effulgence. For them to see the Bhagavad Purana is their eyes. So Lord Shiva says you have to delve very deeply and hear very attentively this Bhagavad Purana. So what happens is that he says, okay, I will tell you this Bhagavad Purana so you can also become immortal, because it's the Amala Purana, the spotless Purana. So he says, but I want to make a deal with you, because when I recite this Bhagavad Purana, because I'm Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, because I'm the topmost Vaishnava, when I start reciting this Bhagavad Purana, I'm going to go into ecstasy. And I'm not going to be aware of all my external circumstances, what's going on outside. So, just so I know that you're hearing, I want you to keep saying, periodically. So I know that you're listening to me. So we know that Vedavyas himself had made a deal with, who was it? Ganesha, Lord Ganesh, when he was compiling the Mahabharata. So he said that you keep writing, or you keep speaking. What was it? That you write, and only if you understand, then you write it. What I'm saying. So anyway, there's that deal that they made. So that's how the Mahabharata was written. Sorry, did you know, Prabhu? You were going to say something? No. Yeah. Okay. So in the same way, Lord Shiva makes this deal with Parvati. And then he starts to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, so he's hearing from time to time, Parvati saying, And after some time, Parvati happens to nod off and she happens to sleep. But Lord Shiva doesn't notice this because he keeps hearing that noise. And then after he recites the whole Purana, he opens his eyes and he sees that, Parvati is asleep. But who is that person who is saying, giving those affirmations? And he sees in a nearby tree, there's a bird, there's a parrot, a shuka, who's very attentively hearing the Bhagavad Purana. And it was the parrot which was imitating Parvati's sound. So Lord Shiva gets quite angry. He says, I'm reciting the topmost Vaishnava literature, the topmost transcendental knowledge, and it's very confidential. I'm reciting it to my wife, but this bird is hearing, this animal is hearing. So as the Leela goes, he gets up with his trident to try to kill this bird. And this bird, in great fear, flies away really fast. And Lord Shiva is chasing Shuka, who is, I'll tell you who he is, but as you probably know, this bird, in great fear, he runs, or flies rather, into the hermitage of Vyasadeva, and he enters Vedavyas's wife's mouth and goes into her womb. And he stays there for many, many years, and that is the Shukadev Goswami. So that is how Bhagavatam is related to Shukadev Goswami. Of course, Vedavyas is the compiler, Vedanta Krit Vedavit Eva Chaham. So that verse from Bhagavad Gita is a direct reference to Vedavyas. Vedavyas is an empowered incarnation. So he's a Shaktivesh avatar. Just like we have Parshuram, who's a Shaktivesh avatar, who's empowered with administrating social justice by killing the Kshatriyas who are not following their particular qualities, and they were harassing the Brahmanas. And Prithu Maharaj, who's a Shaktivesh avatar, who was empowered by Krishna to rule the praja, rule the citizens. So in the same way, Vedavyasa is a Shaktivesh avatar who is empowered by Krishna to compile the Vedic literatures. Because before, Shukadev Goswami, when he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Shiva, he wasn't taking notes in class. Or Sutta Goswami, when he heard Shukadev Goswami speaking, or when Shaunaka Rishi and all those thousands of sages in Naimisharanya heard Sutta Goswami speak the Srimad Bhagavatam, they were not taking notes. But Bhagavatam says, Prayana Alpa Ayusha. In Kali Yuga, people's lives will be very much reduced, and there will be Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Upadrita. Right? Less intelligent persons of Kali Yuga would not only be short-lived but also perplexed with many problems of life. In the Bible it says, physician, heal thyself. The doctor has to be healthy in order to heal the patients. But if the doctor is sick, then how can he be expected to help others? So if the citizens of Kali Yuga are perplexed by so many problems of life, as Prabhupada is mentioning here, how is it possible for them to think of their own welfare and want to speak about the welfare of humanity at large? So that is why the Srimad Bhagavatam Yajna was performed 5,000 years ago. Of course, the sages in Naimisharanya, they started off by just performing a yajna, a fire yajna. And Srimad Bhagavatam explains that it was creating like soot, not soot, but like really dark, thick smoke, and it was covering the bodies of all these sages. So the real yajna was performed when Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. Just like Parvati got the real immortality when Lord Shiva spoke the Bhagavad Purana to her. And immortality, what we mean by that, just like in Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, that the duration of life is not taken away by someone who is listening attentively to Srimad Bhagavatam. And what that means is that the body will die, but you're getting an immortal life as soon as you leave this present body. Instead of facing repeated birth and death in this mature world in the future, you die once to live. Just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said about Vaishnavas, that is very foolish to consider that a Vaishnav dies. A Vaishnav dies to live, and while living, a Vaishnav spreads the glories of the holy name around to all the people of Kali Yuga. So in this way, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Vyasadeva, to his son, Shukadev Goswami. And the important contribution of Vyasadeva is that he actually compiled, so he actually wrote down the Vedic shlokas and the Vedic knowledge because he understood that the people of Kali Yuga would be too unintelligent and they would have very bad memories to be able to remember the transcendental knowledge. But Sanskrit in its original form, like I was just talking to Michael yesterday, he had put on, he was cleaning the kitchen, and he would put on the stereo, he had put on some bhajan, and he was just listening. And he didn't understand it, but he really liked the meter, and he really liked the voice of the person who was singing it. And I told him, it's really nice. So he told me, yeah, he really likes it, and he wants to learn some shlokas in Sanskrit. And I said, you can start with Bhagavad Gita shlokas. Bhagavad Gita's shlokas are the most easiest, the most shortest. But sometimes it happens that long shlokas are actually easier to remember than short. But anyway, Bhagavad Gita shlokas are considered to be very elementary Sanskrit. So I said, you can start with Bhagavad Gita shlokas. And I told him that you're doing a very nice job hearing to this attentively, this song. And he was constantly hearing the song as he was cleaning. And I told him, that's how Sanskrit is supposed to be heard. Or memorized rather. It's a language which is very poetic, and it captures the heart as well, captures the mind as well. And it allows one to memorize the purport which is being spoken just by hearing it. So in Gurukuls in the previous days, there was no slates or there was no notebooks or anything like that. The students would just regularly get up in the morning and they would just recite every single day. And the recitation would enter the ears, and it would sink into their hearts. And then when it was Vigyan, when it was realized, then it would just come out. And they would memorize it for their whole life. So, just a quick history of Vyasadeva, as we know, because here it's saying that he's the incarnation of the son of Satyavati. We know in Mahabharata how it starts off with Shantanu. And King Shantanu, he sees Mother Ganga. And from Mother Ganga, he marries her. I'm not sure if he marries her. I'm guessing he marries her. And then he has the 8 children. But she makes a deal that, okay, I'll be with you, I'll stay with you, but as soon as the child is born, I'll drown them, or I'll set them free in the Ganges. So she does that. Bhishma, she doesn't, because in his previous life, Bhishma was the Vasu who had kidnapped the Kamadhenu from sage Vashishta. And because he got the bulk of the curse from sage Vashishta, he was cursed by the sage to remain for a very, very long time in this material world. So that's why Bhishma has a very, very long lifetime. He has Ichamaran, he dies at his own will. And to serve the wishes of Vashishta, he did live a very long span of life in this material world. So, but sometime after, as Shantanu is going towards the water, he sees a very beautiful woman there. And that woman is Satyavati. And from my memory, Satyavati, she used to have, because she's the daughter of a fisherman, and her job was to ferry people across the river. Because of the fish and all that sort of stuff, her body odor was not very great. So, but then what happened one day is that Parashara Muni, he wanted to cross this river. And she did a very nice job of ferrying him across, and he was very pleased with her. So he gave her the boon that she would be very fragrant. And I hope that's not Rajanapu. She'd be very, very fragrant. And then he actually begot a child through Satyavati, and keeping her virginity intact. And does anyone know the name of the child of Satyavati and Parashara Muni? Yeah, Vedavyasa himself. So Vedavyasa himself is the son of Parashara Muni. And so then what happened is that Shantanu then got attracted to her, and then they had 2 children. Does anyone know the names of those 2 children? Satyavati and Satyavati and Shantanu's 2 children. Sorry, bro? So Shantanu begot 2 children in the womb of Satyavati. So I'm asking, yeah. No, Vichitravirya and? No, Bhishma was with Ganga. No. Chitrangada. So he had 2 sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Vichitravirya, and they had really great hope that they would follow the lineage of Shantanu. But as it happened, Vichitravirya, does anyone know how he passed away? Vichitravirya? That's the other one. That's Chitrangada. So Chitrangada, he was, I don't know exactly what he was doing, but he was doing his thing, and then he saw in the sky, flying above, there was a Gandharva who had the same name as him. And this Gandharva got very envious, like, hey, I'm the Chitrangada. How can this person be called Chitrangada as well? And then he got in a fight with the 2 Chitrangadas, started fighting. And the Gandharva killed the human Chitrangada, who was the son of Shantanu. Vichitravirya, he died prematurely as well. I mean, not as a baby, but as a very young man by tuberculosis, I think Mahabharata says. So he died as well. And then, so then how to continue the lineage, because we need a king to continue the lineage of Shantanu. So then Satyavati tells to Shantanu that, unknown to you, but I do have one other son through Parashara Muni, and my virginity was kept intact. and I can call upon him to beget sons through the wives of Vichitravirya and Chitrangada. Vichitravirya and Chitrangada were married to? Yeah, 3 wives. Yeah, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. Right? And one of them wanted to marry, I think it was Ambalika, she wanted to marry Samba? One of them. Anyway. So he did that. So before they died, before Chitrangada and Vichitravirya died, they were married to these 3 queens. So Vyasadeva was called. And in those times, this ritual was permitted. People were very pure in consciousness and they're very self-controlled. So if a man could not beget a son through his wife, then it was possible for him to ask his brother to beget a son through his own wife, and then that son would be considered to be his son. But in Kali Yuga, there's a verse which says Devarena Sutotpati, isn't it? Kalo something Vivarjayat. Ashvamedam Gavalambam Sanyasam Patrikam Sutotpati Kalo Pancha Vivarjayat. So these things are not permitted in Kali Yuga. To take sannyas, karma sannyas. Karma sannyas is permitted. That's what we're doing. But sannyas based on any other speculative knowledge, Vedanta, whatever, that's not really permitted in Kali Yuga. Ashvalamba, for sacrifice and killing cows is not permitted. And Devarana Sutotpati. So that particular thing of the brother begetting a son in the husband's wife, in the brother's wife, is not permitted. But in that time it was, and Vedavyas did that. Is that one of them as well? Offering oblations to the ancestors. Of flesh. Okay. Is that part of the Ashwamedha Gabalamba? What is the second line? Sannyasam Palapatrikam. Okay. So that's another one. Offering oblation of flesh to the ancestors. So Vyasa did that. Vyasa did that, asked by his mother to do so. And we know that the 3 brothers were born as a result. Pandu, Dhritarashtra, and Vidura. So, I don't know how I got here now. It's 8:45. Yeah, history of Vyasadeva. So, anyway, that's a bit of the history of Vyasadeva, but Vyasadev's main contribution is that he did compile the Shastra, and what he did, Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, is that he separated the Veda as well. That's the other thing that Vyasadeva did. So the Veda was originally 1, and before the Veda was even 1, the Veda was only 4 verses, which were the Chatur Shloki, which were spoken by Krishna to Lord Brahma. So that over time became the Veda, the one Veda, which was then separated by Vyasadeva, again for the same purpose, that people couldn't comprehend so much knowledge, so you had to separate in smaller divisions. And we see that as well, like, nowadays when people study and they become PhDs and all that sort of stuff, instead of knowing, a vast amount of knowledge, they go deeper and deeper and deeper into something very, very small. Like when I did my thesis, it was mechanical engineering related, this thesis, and it was about coatings on the bottom brackets of a bicycle. You know what a bottom bracket is? Before I started my thesis, I never even heard of a bottom bracket. That was the topic that was available, so I just chose it. So a bottom bracket, so you have the 2 wheels of a bicycle. You have the back wheel, right? And the back wheel is connected to the chain, right? And the chain is rotating about a gear, and the gear rotates because of this thing called a bottom bracket. And a bottom bracket is a piece of metal which goes through the hole in the back wheel of a bicycle, and it allows the gear to spin. And it's made it has ball bearings inside to allow for smooth motion. So my thesis was based on what is the best coating that the bottom bracket should have inside it, so that the ball bearings rotate this in a really smooth way, so that the a person who's cycling, they have to exert the least amount of energy. And this was in relation to the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport. So they wanted to, investigate into this. So that was a thesis. That was what I was working on for like 4 months or something like that, 4 or 5 months. And I look back at it and I think, wow, that's Kali Yuga, instead of knowing something about Krishna, who's everything, and the Shastras say that if you know something about Krishna, you know everything, and if there's nothing more for you to know. First or second verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Jnanam teham savijnanam evam yashasi Pandava Yaj Gyat, Gyatavyam avashishyase. So he says, Krishna is telling Arjuna that after me telling you this knowledge, nothing more for you will remain for you to know. So this is the contribution of Vedavyas as the literary incarnation of Lord Krishna. So I'll stop here if there's any quick question. Yes, Prabhu? On two different levels, yeah.
So in Kali Yuga, one may argue or one may question us, like why does, because it's Kali Yuga, we all almost have demonic qualities. So wouldn't it be easier for us to worship Krishna in a demonic way rather than in a devotee way? Because if we attend to the person anyway, because it's easier to think of someone in a negative consciousness rather than thinking in a positive consciousness.
Yeah, but I think that's mentioned even in Krishna book. Prabhupada mentions about Kamsa thinking of Krishna. And he says, yeah, he's thinking of Krishna and he's getting purified, but Prabhupada says that is still not Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna consciousness, devotional service, the quality is pratikul. You have to think of Krishna in a favorable way. So that's Krishna consciousness. And because ultimately Krishna consciousness is that which pleases Krishna. So, and Krishna is a person. Now, just like you're a person. Now, if someone is thinking of you unfavorably, oh, Mandragoshi is such and such, I don't like him, he does this, he has these habits, is that going to please you? Is that person going to please you? No, but he's still thinking about you, right? But on the other hand, if someone's thinking about you very favorably, then you'd show favor and mercy to that person, and you'd want to develop a relationship with that person. So, thinking of Krishna in an unfavorable way, Prabhupada says, is not really Krishna consciousness. So, yeah, we have to be favorably disposed towards Krishna for us to get the real result, which is Bonam Janmanam. No, what is that? What's that verse we recite before 10 offenses? Jnanavan. Bau Janma Karyadi Shravana Kirtana Tabutana Paya Krishna Bhakti Lata. Tabutana Paya Krishna Premadana. So, for us to get Krishna Prema, which is a result of Krishna consciousness, of chanting the holy name, we have to think of Krishna favorably, not in the other way. Okay, so yeah.
I was wanting to ask in this point that what is a better position to rather meditate upon the impersonal Brahma, like to hear the yogis and sages, or is it even better than to think of Krishna in a negative context? What would be a better, because both of them attain the same goal at the end of the day. So who is like better?
Well, Krishna says, Klesho dikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam. He says in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that thinking of him in an impersonal way is very, very difficult. But at the same time, those who are thinking of Krishna in an unfavorable fashion, they still understand that Krishna is a person. So let's take the example of a jnani who is meditating on the impersonal Brahman. What's the destination of a jnani? Impersonal liberation. Aruya kritchena param param tata patantyado nadata yushmadangraya. So they go to the impersonal Brahmajyoti, and what happens to them? They come back down again. Right? Bhagavatam says. They come back down to mature world. Now, I'm just giving one example. It's not like covers everything and everyone. But if one thinks of Krishna in an unfavorable fashion, actually we can sort of give this example because the previous verse is talking about this. The previous verse lists a whole lot of demons who were enemies of Krishna and were fighting with him, right? But then Prabhupada is mentioning that because Krishna killed them, they got liberation. And they got, in one sense, the same liberation as a jnani, or in some instances, if Krishna really favored them, they even went to Vaikuntha, like Putana or Kamsa, I think, even. Kamsa got 400 liberation. Sarupya Mukti. Yeah, I think in Krishna book it says that Kamsa, he actually got, he went to Vaikuntha. Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in Krishna book. It's there? You know, Prabhu? He did, right? I have to double check. But anyway, we understand from Bhagavatam that some people, they went back, some demons went back to Vaikuntha and some demons went to impersonal liberation. So, on an absolute level, judging by the result, because you can judge a tree by its fruits. So, a jnani and a demon both go to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Right? So in that sense, both of them are not so great. So you can't really compare the two. Both of them are pretty much the same. So it's best to be favorably inclined to the personal form of Krishna. I have to double check. I can't remember. But yeah. Oh, yeah. Impersonal. The Brahmavadis. Yeah. Well, the four Kumars were like that as well.
But then the four Kumaras is not a very sort of representational example because they're the four Kumaras.
Yeah.
They're already liberated souls.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of examples like that. Four Kumaras and Sukadeva Goswami.
Yeah.
They're already liberated souls. Just coming to pass on. You don't see a lot of examples in Bhagavatam of the impersonalists. Like you see the example of the four Kumaras and Sukadeva Goswami, but I'm not sure if there's other examples that
Of impersonalists who became...
Yeah, the impersonalists who become personalists. I don't know, is there? Like the Vasa Muni got very impressed when he saw Maharaj, he saw the glories of Maharaj and Harish.
Yeah.
And glorifies the devotees.
But I don't know if that changed him.
I don't know. It seemed like, he got a good lesson.
Yeah. But the principle we should understand is that, like examples, a vast number of examples may not be given, but an impersonalist, when such an impersonalist gets the seed of devotion, over a period of time, he will become a devotee. Because that's the natural condition of the living entity. How does a jiva become an impersonalist? The jiva is originally in the spiritual world with Krishna. The jiva falls down into the mature world, becomes a karmi, rises in his consciousness to the position of jnani, where he becomes an impersonalist. Right? So if the jiva is, and the jiva will, eventually, the jiva will, because Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanamante, Jnanavan, he's saying the jnani, and that jnani may be an impersonalist, will surrender to me, Mam, my personal form. So Krishna is saying it will happen.
Well, actually, the Chaitanya Charitamrita has got several examples.
Oh yeah, it does, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, CC has a lot of examples of that. impersonalists becoming Vaishnavas. Yeah, so. I think Prabhupada says Shudras, but impersonalists. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the cause of forgetfulness. So it's impossible for the soul to forget Krishna, but Krishna makes it possible. Only Krishna can make the jiva forget him. From what I understand, it's in the form of the energy which covers the soul. So the soul in the spiritual world is under the internal potency, under the shelter of the internal potency. But then Krishna allows the soul to be covered by his external potency, Maya. And then he's covered by another energy, which is the Ahankar. And then he's covered by other Bhina Prakritis, like the 5 Panchamahabhutas, earth, fire, air, water, ether, the mind, intelligence, false ego. So these are all Krishna's energies. And it is Krishna which awards the jiva these energies, which to be conditioned by. The jiva, which is in the spiritual world, cannot with his own independence come down to the mature world and assume a mature body. It is Krishna who makes that happen. So yeah, only Krishna can make us forget him. Yeah. Ankar. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yep. That's the enemy, Ankar and Avidya. He did, huh? Yeah, Kamsa got Vaikuntha liberation. Yeah. Yeah. From what I remember, he got a 4-handed form. Okay. It's in Krishna book. Yeah, Putana got liberation. Mm.